Okay, thank you. I'm Michael O'Connell, a consultant and senior fellow with UNICRI, which is the United Nations Interregional Crime and Justice Research Institute. And today I've been invited to give you a bit of an insight into leveraging AI responsibly. And within that, we're going to talk about what is AI and how does it impact on law enforcement, and importantly, the delivery of justice. And to aid this presentation, we're going to wrap it around the responsible AI innovation in law enforcement AI toolkit, which is a program of work which I've been undertaking with the UNICRI and Interpol teams for the last 2.5 years, and is a toolkit which you'll get a link to at the end of this presentation, which can guide you through a whole series of resources, documents, and the rest of it to help particularly law enforcement deal with responsible use of AI. So as I say, I'm a law enforcement expert and a senior fellow at UNICRI's Centre for AI and Robotics. Previously, I was director at Interpol and also a UK police officer with various national agencies. And within some of the career highlights, which gives some reasoning to my being invited to talk to you today, I've developed various enhanced technology and innovation capabilities between public-private sector to address safety concerns, and also advised on a series of ethical standards and adoption of high-end digital technologies, which include AI. So we've seen a growth of generative AI quite significantly over the past years, and it's come into common parlance with regard to both a fear factor and also an excitement factor with regard to AI in general sense. But importantly, then there's the attention that's being paid at the moment in relation to generative AI. And we'll talk about the relevance of that to law enforcement. We also speak here with regard to, just to show you that this isn't a fad, it's not a quick trend, it's here to stay. The technology is going to become rudimentary in law enforcement and public safety. We can see the growth, and I've worked in industry for many years with the big technology players. So there's significant investment going into capability. So it's important law enforcement and the user and the community that are going to be used around this, particularly the public, get confidence and understanding around it. So we also saw as well last year and into the beginning of this year, significant concerns raised around AI technologies. Within this were a series of letters, open letters that were signed by some of the big technology players going into government and others, saying, you know, at the moment we're operating in a bit of a Wild West setting, and should we be bringing in some consideration in relation to a bit of regulation or guardrails, as they're known, to try and bring some common understanding that basically it evolves in a manner that is responsible and doesn't instill harm to society. And that very much was at the center of the work that we did with UNICRI and Interpol, particularly for law enforcement, which we'll come on to. So what are the key concepts around artificial intelligence, and what does that actually mean? So artificial intelligence itself is a multidisciplinary field, and it provides digital systems which lead into new and evolving services with what we perceive as intelligence, including the ability to reason and interact with the data and give us insights that we wouldn't otherwise have been able to access. And within the umbrella of artificial intelligence is then a setting which is known as machine learning. That's a subfield of AI that allows machines, the algorithms, to learn from the data and to give probabilistic scoring and insights for us to make some considerations on it. And then there's a deeper subfield within that of that machine learning, which uses neural network algorithms, which are highly sophisticated mechanisms that are able to calibrate, score, and learn off data in a much deeper and intuitive way, and is at the heart of some of the evolving new technologies, some of which law enforcement are making use of, for example, number plate recognition, and also with regard to facial recognition capabilities, which we'll go into. So it's highly important that law enforcement understand the sophisticated tools that they are now adopting and making use of. And there are 4 components to the AI system. There's the algorithm, which you can see is essentially the series of instruments and instructions that set up and execute automatically. There is then the computer where the algorithm's processed, and importantly, the data, which consists of units of information. But as you can see in this slide, we're talking about the 4 components of the AI system. So it's not just about the technology that we have to pay attention to here, importantly, it's also the human. And you may have heard terminology like human in the loop, human on the loop, but it's important that we understand the human role and responsibility in the use of AI, particularly for it to be used responsibly. And with that, in the law enforcement setting, is the officer themselves as to understanding what the technology is or the systems that they're making use of, how it interprets the data and gives them insights, and then ultimately how the human, the officer, makes decisions on how to interact or make use of that data in an informed way. So the AI system works, as we've spoken, it's a computer system using AI algorithms and data to achieve specific goals. So there's input data, the AI system that we just outlined processes and analyzes it, and it gives an output, and often that output is a probabilistic, insightful measure, which will then give the law enforcement officer the opportunity to make a decision. So, for example, this number plate correlates to another number plate from an ANPR system, and maybe a vehicle of suspicion. Do you want to carry out some activity in that regard? The same way with facial recognition and other systems. So within the program of work that we did, we examined AI domains, and these are some that have relevance for law enforcement, and with them are a whole series of AI use cases. So within that is audio processing and natural language processing, and these have high value in, for example, control and command situations, also for call handling, and also for dealing with large, complicated police investigations. And then there's visual processing, and within that is image optimization and the analysis of CCTV imagery, ANPR, together with object identification, behavioral recognition in public settings, and also with regard to number plate recognition as examples. And then in the back end of law enforcement, there's experiences that we can turn to that give us benefits with regard to resource optimization, procurement processes, supply chain management. And all of these can feed into policing capabilities, as you can see here, around facial recognition, predictive policing, counterterrorism financing, and also non-intrusive surveillance capabilities. So importantly, crime is evolving, it's getting increasingly complex, it's clearly transnational, and data is growing exponentially. And AI has become a powerful tool in that it can increase the efficiency and enhance existing capabilities. So it truly is a game changer for law enforcement. And AI practices in policing from our early analysis identified that to date, they've very much been taking a technology-first approach, rather than looking at maybe the processes and the policy as a first instance. So that then becomes a secondary. So what's the concerns with this in this sort of approach, where we're buying technology and trying to make it fit and then make use of it? Is it truly responsible? Well, the problems with that approach are that it may result in unethical or unfair outcomes and negatively impact on human rights because we don't fully understand how the systems work. It may erode fundamental rule of law principles, such as the presumption of innocence, and also then undermine public trust and confidence. So as you can see, there's a question with regard to how that impacts with regard to a principle and responsible approach that we would advocate, where we make sure that technology respects human rights and ethical needs, preserves rule of law and the related principles, and promotes public trust and confidence. So if it's not used properly, AI used by police may pose serious risks. So as we said, it can impact on those human rights, can erode the fundamental rule of law principles, such as the presumption of innocence, which is key to policing, and then undermine and erode public trust and confidence. So we need to be responsible in our use. So why do we need to be responsible? As we say, law enforcement context requires this specialist attention because we deal with high-risk situations, we deal with unique competencies, and also what we carry out in a law enforcement setting has effects on society and individuals. And it's important that we then help identify and prevent and minimize these risks and maximize the benefits of using the AI systems. And when we then dig deeper into this activity, we then realize that there is a continuous process throughout the life cycle and use of AI, going from the planning stage then through to either procurement or self-design and development of these tools, and then ensuring that we have use and monitoring of the capability to make sure it continues to fulfill its required function. But importantly, towards the end of their life cycle is then the decommissioning work, which needs close attention as well. So what are these principles and what's the benefit of them? Well, we've identified them as being lawfulness, ensuring that there's good governance, there's minimization of harm, human autonomy, and then fairness. So they're the 5 core principles for what we're calling responsible AI innovation. They can be found in the toolbook, which we will give you context to. And then there's the foundations of these, which are the 5 core principles, which we'll skip through, noting the time that we have for the presentation. So with regard to lawfulness, obviously we have to follow applicable laws and regulations. And there's a 5-step assessment that you can find within the guidance documents that we provide, which talk about interference, legal basis, legitimacy, necessity, and importantly, proportionality for you to work through. And these try to ensure that there's a minimization of harm, that law enforcement should prevent, eliminate, or mitigate the risk of harm to individuals and communities that can arise from the use of these technologies. We need to make sure that there's robustness and safety, that they're consistent and protected against risk, that they're accurate in the decisions and the recommendations that they make in their predictions, that there's human and environmental well-being within that, and included within that is energy consumption and use for these systems, and also the efficiency of them, that there's a favorable ratio between costs and the benefits that can be generated. And then finally, with regard to human autonomy, that they should engage in a way that respects and safeguards humans' capacity and rate their ability and right to self-governance. So how do we achieve that? We achieve that through human oversight and control, through making sure that we preserve human agency, that humans can act upon their decisions without manipulation or force from technology, that privacy is protected, and also that transparency and explainability is key with regard to the communication of the practices and information sharing throughout the life cycle of the systems. We have to make sure and maintain that there is fairness, not just that the systems operate in a non-discriminatory manner, but also there's equability with regard to making sure that society and people are safeguarded, that decisions and the use of the technology are not harmful. And we go about that through taking a close focus around equality and non-discrimination, particularly around the use of the data, the meaning of the data, how it's interpreted, how it's collected, and how it's used, that we make sure that that data and the use of the machines give protection to vulnerable groups, and that they don't unduly focus in on them and present those groups at a biased risk. And also that there's diversity and accessibility to the systems, and that we can explain their use so that when there is contest or challenge to them, we can explain, and there are mechanisms to support redress with regard to the ability to challenge AI-based decisions. So whether this to ensure it at another level is then for law enforcement is particularly making sure that there is good governance, that there are overarching policies, processes, and structures to foster a culture of responsible AI innovation. And that includes traceability and auditability of the procedures and the systems and how the machines work, and also being accountable with regard to the mechanisms that are in place to determine who's responsible for decisions, how they are made, how the data and the systems inform those decisions, and ultimately that it was a human that was making the outcome that can have an impact on privacy and safety. So it's important that we put all of these principles into practice, as we spoke about, and the toolkit goes a significant way to do this. And there's a whole series of resources that can help you understand the principles and how they interact. It's a fluidic system, so that it's not ending, it's cyclical. And the combination of these will ensure that law enforcement use gets it more right than wrong. And importantly, the engagement and community and communication with the community that they serve is in a position where they're informed, and it can drive trust and confidence in the digital transformation of law enforcement. So I thank you for your presentation. We hope it's been useful to you. Here are the various links that you can find access to and get in touch with us. And also, if you go on the UNICRI website, you'll be able to find the link into the Responsible AI Law Enforcement Toolkit. Thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to your questions.